Welcome to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
Hey Kira, so what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the Bechdel Test.
Oh, okay. We might get some hate mail for that, but it should be fine. I think we'll be fine.
And also we're mentioning Anita Sarkeesian.
No! Kira, help! I'm being buried alive in the hate mail! Help!
Ha 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 ha. Good luck. I'm not helping you.
Dead. So yeah, we're talking about the Bechdel test today.
Yes.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Kira.
And let's get to it. So, Kira, what is the Bechdel test?
Oh, you want to start with the rules of the Bechdel test?
Why don't you tell us what it is? Where did it come from?
Okay, well, the history of the Bechdel test is that it was first created...
Well, actually, no, you were right. Let's do the rules first.
Okay. The rules of the Bechdel test is that there have to be two named female characters who speak to each other about something other than a man.
In a movie.
Yeah, in a movie or other piece of media.
Yeah, but this is usually used for movies, especially, the big blockbusters that come out every year.
Mm-hmm, of course.
So that's the rule number one. You have to have two named females talk to each other. Mm-hmm. You would be surprised how many movies fail the Bechdel test.
Yeah, only about 53% at most pass this test.
Yes, so this test really shows you how terrible female representation is in movies.
Yes, and that's mainly popular movies, so,
but still,
take that with a grain of salt.
You can use it for anything, but yeah, when it comes to popular movies, most fail. Mm-hmm. Hollywood does terrible. With this test. And that's just rule number one, and so many of them can't even get that.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Look at any movie you've seen. See if there's actually two female characters that are named and talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure every James Bond movie fails this test.
I wouldn't know. I'd have to see.
Don't bother. Okay, what's the next rule?
Okay, wait, next rule.
Yeah, you said rule number one.
I said all the rules. Rule 1 is there have to be two named female characters. 2, who talk to each other. 3, about something other than a man.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so those are the 3 rules.
Yes.
Now, there is a sort of 4th rule, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is the one Anita sort of came up with.
Yeah,
she's
a famously infamous feminist online.
Yeah.
And she came up with basically a 4th corollary, and not everyone uses this one, but just why don't you tell us what it is?
That the conversation has to last longer than 30 seconds.
Yes, and the reason she came up with this rule was because there were so many movies that were passing the test, but barely so.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
You'd have some people, two of the women would be like, oh, hey, what's for dinner? Chicken. Great. And that would be the only time they talked the entire time.
Yeah.
So the rule was, okay, 30 seconds.
Yeah, right? I get that.
All right.
We'll actually be able to talk about that later on with some of the movies.
All right. So what's the history of this test? How did this test come about into being?
This test was actually created by Alison Bechdel in a comic that she did. However, she credited her friend Liz Wallace with it, which is why it's sometimes called the Bechdel-Wallace test. And
who are they, though?
Alison Bechdel is a cartoonist and artist, and she's a lesbian.
Cool.
So, yes. And I don't know much about Liz Wallace because it literally didn't say anything about her.
It's all right.
But yeah. And she was a friend who apparently came up with it, and then Alison Bechdel was the one who put it in her comic. And this was in 1985, the first time it appeared.
All right, so this test has been around for a little while now.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would name drop the comic, but I'm kind of uncomfortable saying the name, so I'm not going to do that.
Wait, really?
Because it has a slur in it for something that I'm not.
Is that a slur?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I guess we'll just be on the safe side and not say it then.
Yes. I'm just going to say bleeps to watch out for.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
That's the name of the comic. So we're going to test some movies.
Yes. So, like, we want to talk about the Bechdel test because we do a lot of all of these Wide Look podcasts tend to be about feminism. We're going to have some about other things. Don't you worry. But this is something we just have a lot to get off on our chests about, right?
Yes, because we're in an environment where we feel like we need to at least be able to scream into the void about these things because we're passionate about them.
Isn't that what the internet's for?
Yes, screaming into the void.
I guess if that was all you wanted to do, you would just get Twitter. Because that's what Twitter is. I imagine Twitter, if it was in a real life analog, would just be a whole bunch of people in a giant gymnasium screaming at each other. And in the corner, you have the president being openly racist.
That's funny.
Is that okay? I don't know if I was able to. I feel like it's really hard to mention Twitter and not say that.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with you.
All right. But yeah, so we wanted to talk about the Bechdel test because we actually recently mentioned it on our How to Make a Female Character or a seductive woman.
Mm-hmm. And we each picked 5 favorite movies.
Our 5 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, personally. And we will be talking about them and putting them to the Bechdel test.
Yeah, so we swapped our 5 favorite movies and we each researched them. So we don't know exactly how our own movies have done yet.
Yeah, I looked his up and he looked my favorites.
Oh, I should mention though, the Bechdel test is not a one-to-one equation with feminism.
No, it isn't. It's just a litmus test, sort of.
Yeah, it's a starting off point where if it passes it, that's great. You've done the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't pass it, it's probably problematic, but not necessarily. Because the problem is that so many movies fail it.
Yeah.
We talked about this on our Making a Female Character one, that each of the rules can always have exceptions. Like, what if the movie only has one human character in it at all? Like Gravity.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that did have 2, but still, it was only 2.
Yeah. And in that case, I feel like you don't absolutely have to pass it to be considered feminist, like a feminist piece of media or whatever you want to call it.
And it can still be feminist in other ways.
Exactly.
Like having a lead female protagonist.
Yeah, it could still be progressive in other ways.
The Bechdel test is really handy for seeing how terrible we are with representation when you can just look at how many movies fail it across the board.
Yeah, it's actually sort of a social barometer as to how we're doing as a society.
Yes, and as two people that...
Societal parameter.
Yeah. As 2 people that call ourselves feminists, I'm thinking that we're probably going to have more passing movies than most people. But I think it's going to go without saying that even some of our favorites are going to fail.
Yeah, exactly. Just because there's so many that don't pass it.
Exactly. And we might like them for other reasons and they just still fail. So I think this will be fun to do, to be self-analytical and criticize our own favorites and kind of talk about them. And this will be a good way of giving a little overview of our favorites. You know, think of it as a top 10 list because we have 5 each.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So I guess we should do number 5 first, our 5th favorite movies each.
Oh, number 5 first, the last one?
Yeah, we'll work our way up to number 1.
Okay. Did you put them in the order you like them?
Yes.
I kind of did, I guess. I mean, if you could say the first one you think of has to be your favorite.
When I gave you my list, I numbered it 1 to 5. When you gave me your list, I figured even though you didn't number it, it was still in that order.
Fair enough.
Was it?
Kind of.
All right.
It doesn't
You just
really
listed
matter.
your favorite and then listed your next favorite and your next and your next. Is that what you did?
Yeah.
All right. That'll be fine.
Yeah. Sorry.
Do you want me to analyze yours first or you to analyze mine first?
You can analyze mine first.
Really?
Yeah, because I told the history and everything.
All right. I'm going to pull up my notes. Don't look.
Okay.
Okay, so, Kira.
Yeah?
Your 5th favorite movie is Ramen Girl. I had literally never heard of this movie.
Yeah, it's a pretty rare movie.
So why don't you give us a synopsis of what it's about so our listeners know. And so I can know, honestly.
Yeah, it's spoilers, I suppose, for the movie.
Yeah. We're going to have spoilers for movies, but... So if we're going to say the name of the movie before we reveal what it's about. So Ramen Girl, so if you don't want that spoiled, skip ahead.
Yes. This is a movie I actually just saw on Netflix one day and watched it, and then I loved it. It's basically the story about this woman who's American who gets ditched in Tokyo by her boyfriend and has to figure out a way to survive in
Just keep
Japan.
in mind, we only have like 5 minutes per movie.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
So
just
yeah,
saying.
she's stranded in Japan and she finds her way by learning how to make ramen and working at this local ramen shop. And that's how she learns more about herself and eventually becomes a good enough ramen chef to have her own place.
Okay, great. Is that it? Mm-hmm. All right, so don't look at the notes.
Okay.
Cheater. Okay, so does Ramen Girl pass the Bechdel test?
Uh-huh.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from my research, the answer is no. It fails the Bechdel test.
It passes it.
Really?
Yes, the thing is there's a language barrier between the main character of the movie and the other characters.
Okay, but I mean, before you say that, I tried looking at it because I had never heard of this movie before. And not only that, it was such a low-profile movie, it was hard to find a synopsis of it.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And when I read it, there were only 2 female characters that were named that it mentioned. One of them being the protagonist and one being a wife of somebody. And I could not find a single instance of them talking to each other. Now, you've seen the movie, so correct me, but are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure there is a language barrier between the characters in the movie, so it's difficult to say for sure, but she does try to talk to the wife, and she also tries to talk to some of the female patrons who get named. And the female patrons also talk to each other in the ramen shop about their lives and stuff.
The patrons are named?
Some of them, yeah, because they're regulars. They come there all the time.
Okay, but they're named.
Pretty sure, yeah. And even if not, I'm sure she talks to the wife at one point during the movie.
But I feel like the language barrier nullifies it because then you're not having actual communication.
I suppose you could say that, yeah, the language barrier might nullify that. Because the entire time, since she's literally stranded in a foreign country, she doesn't know Japanese. And he stranded her there, so she's just...
Everything I could see was just that this was a romantic comedy. Every conversation I saw listed was that she was talking to the guy.
What guy?
Wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I sort of pushed that romantic plot to the side because she focused on becoming a ramen chef.
Right. And even the ramen chef that was teaching her was a guy, too.
Yeah, he was.
So...
I could say that it failed. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think there's enough qualifiers there to make it not really pass, because I'm doubtful they were named. Maybe some of them were, but then which ones?
Yeah.
There's also the language barrier to keep in mind. Did they actually have a conversation? Did ideas transfer? Mm-hmm. And you completely forgot about the romance subplot. So that makes me think that maybe it's been long enough that you're not sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I've never seen it, so I can't say that either. But I feel we should play it safe and say it failed. We don't want to say it passed. We don't want to give it that credit if we're not sure it deserves it. So we'll just put it down as it probably failed.
That's fine. All right.
Now, even if it did pass, I definitely know it would have failed the Anita Scarcesian corollary.
Yeah, it really would have.
Let's just call that Rule 4.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that one. Hopefully all these other ones will be more well known.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're going to do my number 5 now, right?
Yes.
All right.
Black Panther.
Yeah, I really like that movie. Okay, so I'll give a synopsis. For those of you who aren't aware, it is a Marvel movie, but it really stands out because it is one of very few movies that has been made within recent years that has a predominantly African American cast. Mm-hmm. The only other one I can even think of is Get Out. Oh, there's another one, Moonlight.
Oh, okay.
So there's a few, but this was a very notorious, big name, big budget African American movie.
Yeah, it was great.
And well, not even just American, just so much African descent all over the place. It takes place in Africa. It's about a sort of Atlantis of Africa called Wakanda, where they got much more advanced technology than the rest of humankind. Mm-hmm. And they decided to hoard it. They became isolationists because they didn't want to bother with the rest of the world.
Yeah, they were scared of what the rest of the world would do if they found out.
And the main character is their king, who has the powers of the Black Panther, which is passed down through the generations. Uh-huh. He's like the protector of Wakanda.
Yes.
And the whole story is about how they have a illegitimate child who is raised in America. He is African American, and he realizes how discriminatory that society is.
Yeah,
He grows up in Oakland specifically.
Yes.
So he has it really hard. So he ends up basically, when he grows up, he goes to Wakanda, tries to become the king, and is basically like, we're going to liberate all people of African descent around the world.
Yeah.
So he's violent, yes, but he has such a good point.
Yes. That's what makes one of the best villains.
Yeah, better villain than Thanos.
Yes, I completely agree.
And I mean, I'm not of African descent, but I've heard a lot of stories from people that were just so happy to finally see themselves represented.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Yeah. So that's why I feel like it's my number 5 favorite. All right, so tell us.
It barely passes.
It passed?
Yes.
Oh, I was really worried.
It passes just barely. It would not have passed the 4th rule.
Oh, what? How did it pass? Do you know?
Yes. There is a couple of conversations between some of the female characters during the events of the movie that...
Okay, did you know at all any of these conversations?
Yeah, like later on when there's the big battle going on against...
Killmonger, the bad guy?
Yeah. What was her name? Shuri? And the general?
Right.
They have a couple of exchanges when they're getting ready for battle. Like the armor and, like talking when they're fighting, like telling her to run away and that kind of thing when they're getting ready.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that is literally the only part that you can absolutely say is 2 females not talking about a man. And to be fair, I kind of see the point in this movie where the
focus was definitely on race as opposed to gender.
Yes, and also the fact that the main character and the main villain were both male.
So that really inhibited it.
Yeah, because a lot of conversations included them or were about them, and that's the only reason it didn't pass as quite that well. But it still passed.
I mean, I think that's mostly because like it was focusing on race, right? And it had a lot to say. It was a very progressive movie. And there were still very strong female characters in it, right? The problem, though, is that they still could have done better. They still could have had, it's not that hard to pass the Bechdel test, right? So yeah, I really like this movie. I think it's really great, but this is definitely a shortcoming of it, that it barely passes this.
Yeah,
and it fails
honestly,
the 4th corollary, the 4th rule.
It has such good female characters. I feel like they could have easily...
had more interaction between them.
Yes. Like, at least they put in the effort to make good characterized female characters. They just didn't utilize them correctly.
And by the way, I also heard that in the comics, 2 of the guards, the more background female characters, were actually...
they were in a relationship?
Yeah.
They're lesbians.
Yes.
Lesbians. Okay.
And that was completely erased from the movie because Disney has a firm stance against showing any of that.
Yeah, I know.
Which is, in my opinion, an even bigger failing than the Bechdel test. Like, that is egregious. You are literally just censoring at that point. It's dumb.
Yes. Okay, so you're on the next one.
Okay, so hey, don't look.
I'm not looking.
You keep looking at it.
Stop it.
Number 4, Kira's 4th favorite movie, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So this one actually did pass.
It did?
Yes. Not by a long shot. There were only...
Wait. Are we going to do a synopsis?
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Do that.
This is basically a movie in the Harry Potter universe following an adventure of Newt Scamander, who is the author of the textbook in universe of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
And it's like a prequel to the Harry Potter stories, but with different characters.
Yes, because they have Grindelwald, who's an old villain.
Who's like the precursor to Voldemort.
All right.
Oh, so yeah. So the main character, he's not your traditional hero. He's very social. He loves animals, magical animals.
Yeah, he's kind of a nerd.
Right. But there are some female characters.
Yes.
So, like, there was a conversation between Queenie and Tina where they talk about Tina's day, like where she's been and what she had for lunch. And there's one conversation between Madame Pikiri, is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Talks about her not being an Auror.
Oh.
So it was really a handful of times. Definitely would not have passed the fourth rule.
I can understand that.
And, I think part of this is related to female representation, like kind of 4 players featuring the girl, or just in general, where you'll have a group of people and you'll have one woman there, right?
Yeah.
And, they had another group of people with a woman, so they passed because those women did actually talk to each other once or twice.
Well, they're sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, but they very rarely interacted.
Yeah, but that was they were good characters.
Yes, but, passed the Bechdel test, did not pass the fourth rule.
Fair enough.
All right. Your turn.
Okay. Yours is District 9.
Well, actually, no, it's not.
Oh, isn't it Spirited Away?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we can't do my number 4, Spirited Away, because someone else chose Spirited Away, and we didn't want to analyze the same movie twice.
Yeah.
So you asked me to substitute one, so I was like, District 9, I guess.
Okay.
So I guess I should give a synopsis. By the way, I want to say, I've talked about how I've gotten more progressive in my life, and I was raised in an ultra conservative cult, essentially. Well, not literally, but it felt that way. I had to reevaluate. Like when I thought of my 5 favorite movies for this list, I had to reevaluate whether they were good.
Yeah.
Like we watched Spirited Away the other night because I was like, is this one good as I thought it was? And it was. District 9, I'm not sure about. I get it was an allegory for race, but I don't know if it was a problematic one or not. So that's why I didn't want to put it in my top favorite 5. But you asked me to sub one in, so I'm subbing one in. District 9 is basically about above Johannesburg in South Africa, an alien spaceship comes to rest. And it just sits there. So the South African government, they go in there, they bust into the ship, and they find these aliens are malnourished and they've been starving and been trapped in there. So they set up these camps to try to rehabilitate them, nurse them back to health. But they eventually become slums. The aliens are essentially treated as even worse than minority groups on Earth. We are super specious towards them. So much so that they even call them prawns, which is a derogatory term from a shellfish. Now, they did have amazing technology, and you find out the South African government, along with basically the UN, is taking advantage of them and experimenting on them. The main character ends up getting a experimental chemical from a prawn who's been named Christopher. Kind of like an anglicization kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Christopher, it turns out, was the pilot. And he's trying to get the ship back up and running again, but they have barely any property, they have barely any rights, so he's not telling any of the humans about this. The main character, Wickus, the human, he's one of the agents. When he's confiscating stuff, he gets this chemical, sprays it on himself, and it turns him into a prawn. Yes. Because of technology.
Yeah.
He then has to go firsthand and see what it's like being harassed by them. So yeah, this whole movie is an allegory of racism. And so yeah, that's basically the synopsis. I guess I should mention the end. In the end, Wickus ends up giving his life to help Christopher get the ship back, and they escape.
Okay.
But they have to do so and leave the rest of the prawns behind. So everyone's unsure, like, if Christopher's going to come back and declare war or whatnot. Meanwhile, Wickus is stuck as a prawn, and he has to endure the suffering with the rest of them. Okay, so that's the story.
Yeah. No, did not pass.
Figured.
Yeah. It had very few female characters to begin with, and they
all...
all...
Yeah, Wickus's wife. I think that's it.
Yeah, and they all talk about the main character.
Wickus, yeah.
Yeah, so... And that none of them ever talk to each other.
And again, this movie might be really problematic. I need to rewatch this. Because there were some depictions of Nigerian gangs. And basically the only way it wouldn't be problematic is if it was accurate.
Yeah.
And I don't have the knowledge on whether that's true or not. So I'm just mentioning that I am aware of this and I'm not endorsing this movie. And we're not even going to do an episode over this unless I can rewatch it and verify it one way or the other.
All right, go.
So what number are we on? 3?
Yeah.
All right. Kira's third favorite movie is Maleficent.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us an overview?
Maleficent is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty from the villain's point of view, and it changes some things up in the fairy tale. And
I thought it was Snow White, actually.
no, what do you? No.
Oh, that's the one with the mirror and the apple. My
Yes.
bad. Never mind. Okay.
It's Sleeping Beauty.
Sorry.
Come
Okay.
on.
I got my princesses mixed up. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Sleeping Beauty. Her name was freaking Aurora. How did you miss that?
I don't know Sleeping Beauty's name.
Aurora.
Okay. Now I know.
Oh my god. Okay, sorry for that. Anyway, yeah, it's a really good retelling of the story, and
From the villain's point of view.
yes, and it makes some great changes to the story.
Yes. Like, basically it explains why she did what she did, and when you learn her reasons, it's like really empathetical. So why don't you give us a rundown of the plot? Try to be quick about it.
Okay, so Maleficent is a fairy who develops a relationship with a human named Stefan. Stefan. Then, after a while, she doesn't see him anymore until they're both adults. But when he does see her, he takes her wings.
Cuts them off, amputates them.
Yeah, cuts off her wings because the king put a bounty on her head after she battled with the human kingdom. And so Stefan becomes king, and he has a daughter, and Maleficent curses their daughter to fall asleep on her 16th birthday.
But she does it out of vengeance because this man stole her wings.
Yes. And she becomes queen of the fairy world first. And then she curses Aurora, the daughter, to fall asleep and never wake up until true love's kiss. But she doesn't believe in true love, so she doesn't think Aurora will ever wake up. So, yeah, a bunch of things happen while Aurora grows up, and Maleficent and Aurora eventually become close. Aurora ends up falling asleep, but Maleficent actually charges in to save her, bringing a man that Aurora met earlier that she thought it was true love. He kisses her, but she doesn't wake up until Maleficent kisses her on the head. So, yeah, Maleficent was the one who truly loved Aurora.
Yeah, it was motherly love.
Yes. And anyway, so Stefan attacks Maleficent as they're leaving. They have a battle. She kills Stefan. And then they return to the fairy world where after Maleficent gets back her wings. And Aurora rules over both the fairy and human kingdoms.
Good summary. Mm-hmm. Do you want to know if it passes?
Yeah.
It does.
Of course it does.
With flying colors. This is the biggest pass we've had yet.
Yeah.
Because Maleficent speaks with Aurora a lot.
Yeah.
Like they have like minutes long, so it passes even the fourth rule.
That's awesome.
Because they really have emotional heart-to-hearts, and they very rarely ever even talk about the man until later on. Mm-hmm. When they realize their relationship to each other.
Wow.
Not only does this movie pass so well, but it even fails the reverse Bechdel test.
Oh, really?
Yes. There's only one named man. You hear me?
Yeah, Stefan.
And never does the man ever talk about anything that isn't a woman.
That's so funny.
if you do a Bechdel test for men, this movie completely bombs and fails it, which means to me it's especially progressive.
Yeah, that's great.
I did see a complaint online where this idiot was talking about how like, oh well, if it fails the reverse Bechdel test, that means it's actually prejudiced against men, which is completely ridiculous when you compare movies and you see how like over 50% of them are favoring men because they failed the Bechdel test, right? Mm-hmm. Or do other egregious non-progressive things. Mm-hmm. So when a movie like this is is representative of women to the detriment of men, it's not furthering an imbalance, it's correcting for one.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So Maleficent was definitely a good choice for you, Kira.
Mm-hmm. I love that movie.
All right, next.
Interstellar.
That's my third favorite movie.
Yes.
I love me some sci-fi, and that is some great sci-fi. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a synopsis. Mm-hmm. It takes place in an X number of years into the future. We don't know how long. And by this time, humanity is starting to run out of resources to survive. We have basically run the planet barren. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are focused on trying to rebuild Earth But NASA has a secret operation where they say we're not meant to rebuild it, we're meant to leave it and find a new planet. So they do this last-ditch attempt to save humanity by going to another star system. They go to one around a black hole named Gargantua because it has 3 known sustainable systems, ones that are said to have enough qualities for life. Mm-hmm. So they end up having to explore them one by one. The first one they explore is a water world, completely filled with water. But it's so close to the black hole that there's tidal waves that destroy everything on it. And there's so much cool science fiction. Like it's actually a temporal strain. Crap, I forgot what the word for it is.
I forgot.
Temporal...
Dilation?
Time dilation, thank you.
Yes.
Where 1 minute on this planet, because it's so close to the black hole, is several years and decades in the real world, or sorry,
on Earth
compared to Earth. Yes. But also the spaceship, because they send in a pod to go down there. They look at it. They're like, "Oh, this is terrible. We gotta get out of here." By the time they come back, it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
They then explore another planet that's covered in ice, and it does not work. And then the third one, they finally get it right. Mm-hmm. But they have to send the information back in time, so they go into a black hole, and there's time dilation that goes into reverse. It's awesome. They end up saving humanity. But the sad thing is that the main character, Matthew McConaughey, which is, I know Matthew McConaughey, but it's really emotional because he has his daughter. And by the time that he manages to come back from this mission, she is an old woman. Mm-hmm. But she was basically the scientist who saved the rest of humanity. He was the explorer.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people don't like this movie because, I mentioned this before, people wanted sci-fi or emotion. They don't think it can have both. And I think this movie has both, and that's why I love it.
Okay.
All right.
Can I go now?
I had to get it out there.
I understand. Can I go now?
Yes.
It barely passes.
Woo!
There are 2 female astronauts, whatever you want to call them. 2 female
astronauts
on the crew of the spaceship.
Okay.
And they have a conversation about one of their son.
Right.
So you can almost discount it because it is technically about a man, but technically not because it's just her son. So, yeah, and...
I think the reason this fails is because there were more male characters than there really needed to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the daughter, what was her name? Murphy, right? Mm-hmm. She was a woman. She was a very good female character, I think, right? Mm-hmm. She was a very intelligent scientist.
Yeah.
But everyone else seemed to be a man. I mean, there were the 2 women on the ship, but they barely spoke. There was one guy, I forgot what his name was. He was the mathematician that stayed on the ship for decades. Mm-hmm. He could have been a woman. Yeah. You know? I think it just shows the problem with the representation, which, is one of the bigger flaws with this film, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Even the robots, like, you didn't have a single female one. Now, you can say that maybe they were going for that, the heteromasculinity, since the robots were based on marine personalities. But come on, did you really have to go with that? Or could you have maybe been a new trendsetter and make a female marine robots? Women can be marine robots, too. Okay. Sorry.
Next movie.
Okay. Number 2 for you.
Yes.
Spirited Away.
Yes.
So this is why we didn't do Spirited Away for me, because you ranked it higher. So if it's your second movie, we're going to analyze it on your behalf. So why don't you give the synopsis?
Spirited Away is about a little girl.
Oh, it's an anime.
Yeah, it's an animated movie.
The best.
Yes, it's about a little girl who gets trapped in the world of yokai and has to escape and
it's like a spirit world.
Yeah, a spirit world. And she tries to escape with her parents and go back home. And it's the story of her journey doing that. I'm not going to spoil anymore.
Wait, really? This movie's all about spoilers. Or this episode's all about spoilers.
Well, she goes on this sort of adventure because...
you don't have to give too much detail if you prefer not to.
Okay. She stays in the bathhouse of the spirit world.
She has to work there in order to survive.
Yeah, she has to work there in order to stay in the spirit world.
Child labor.
Yeah, and then she has to go on a journey to find another powerful spirit and return something that was stolen from her.
She basically is trying to earn her freedom and her parents' freedom, and she has to work to do it in this completely foreign world.
Yes. And so she completes her journey and passes her final test and gets her parents and leaves. And it's been a couple days since they've been there. So, yeah. And the beginning of the movie tells you that she was moving to a completely new town and a new school.
Right. The entire story is about a little girl trying to survive in a scary and foreign world. Mm-hmm. And they make the analogy of just moving to a new city versus, being stuck in a spirit world, and how to her it's really kind of the same thing. It's an allegory.
Yes. And after she goes on this journey into the spirit world, she says that she could totally handle a new school.
It'll be nothing compared to that.
Yeah.
So you'll be glad to know that it passes.
Yay!
Not as great as Maleficent, but pretty well.
Yeah.
It easily passes the tests. The main character, Chihiro, she talks to so many different female characters, like Yubaba, the boss of the bathhouse, Zeniba, her twin sister, Lynn, a fellow worker that helps her out, and almost never at any time, except for a few times where they talk about Haku, the dragon, love
spirit.
interest. Yeah. Aside from the few times they talk about him, they're always talking about like how to survive, how to do the job, what's she gonna do there to make it through the day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a really great show, and it definitely passes. It even passes the fourth rule because they definitely talk more than 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, so your movie is
My number 2?
Yes, Frozen.
Oh, definitely. Now, some people don't. We talked about this where there's a lot of backlash to Frozen, but it's a great film.
Honestly, there's only so much backlash because little girls love it, and anything little girls love has to be seen as something dumb and childish.
And inferior when it's not.
Yeah.
It was like the first Disney movie to champion a non-romantic relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe not the first, but it felt like it.
I was going to say something about how because boy bands' main audiences are young preteen girls, they're seen as dumb and overrated.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that before.
But sometimes they make good music,
Definitely true.
But anyway, yeah, Frozen. You want to give a synopsis?
Oh, yes. It's a story about this princess who finds out she has ice powers. She can't reveal them because she will be seen as like a witch, and she'll be reviled by her kingdom. So she's trained and raised her entire life to hold it in and to not show it. So naturally, this is like an allegory for basically anything that makes you non-conforming to your society.
I've heard that it was from some sort of mental illness.
I think a lot of people in the LGBT community have embraced this concept because it's so easily relatable.
True. Yeah.
And I think that's why so many people love this. I mean, it can stand in for many things, but to me, the truest thing is, being a non-hetero person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she has to hold it in her entire life until she gets coronated as queen, and she just literally can't hold it anymore and slips and messes up. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, she ends up getting ousted, and she has to retreat into the snowy mountains.
Yeah, she runs away.
She loses everything.
Yeah.
She gets chased out. So now that she's out there, that's when she has her famous Let It Go song. Uh-huh. And during the sequence, it's such a transformative character moment where she's like, okay, I've lost everything because I let it slip, and now they know. So I don't need to hide anymore. I'm going to embrace who I am. I'm going to let it go. Yeah. And that's when she, literally during the song, creates the ice castle and becomes the ice queen. Mm-hmm. Over the course of the story, they make you think there's a romantic involvement, but it turns out, because she has a sister, right?
Yeah, and her sister gets engaged.
With a man that tries to kill her.
Yes.
In order to save her, you have to have true love, and Elsa ends up being the one to save her. Kind of like that Maleficent twist. Yeah. But I think Frozen came out first. Yeah. So yeah, it ends up being sisterly love that saves the day. Mm-hmm. So neither of them is really a villain. In fact, the only real villain of the story was the people who led the mob, the guy who led the mob.
Oh, well, also the guy who tricked Anna into thinking that he loved her.
Yeah, the guy killing the girl. He was bad too.
Yes, he was about to straight up murder her. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the rating on this?
It definitely passes.
Yes.
Well, the two sisters have enough conversation that it
Exactly.
passes. Yeah.
There's not a lot of females other than them, is there?
No, but the fact that they're the two main characters means that they even pass the fourth rule because, of course, they talk more than 30 seconds at some points in the movies. Like, for example, when I believe when Anna confronts Elsa in the castle, that conversation lasts more than 30 seconds.
Well, there's probably plenty of them. Mm-hmm. The thing, you know what I find the worst part about this movie?
What?
Olaf, the living snowman. Because
Really?
basically he's like, oh, I got ice powers, I can do this, and then, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna create life. It's like, wait a minute, what? I've seen so many things online, like, why don't you just, like, make snowmen of your parents and then bring them to life? But, I don't know, I feel like that was literally just done for mascot purposes.
Yeah,
for
probably.
the movie. So I really could have done without Olaf to begin with.
Okay.
All right, we on number 1 now, right?
Yes.
Okay, guys, so Kira's number 1 favorite movie is Legally Blonde.
Hell yeah.
So why don't you give us a synopsis?
There is so much girl power in this movie, and it is so feminist, like, yes. Basically, the movie focuses on a blonde woman named Elle Woods who gets broken up with by a man who she thought they were going to get married. Like, she thought he was going to pop the question. And so they break up because she isn't serious enough for him. So she decides, screw it, I'm going to go to Harvard and prove that I can do this. And so, because he goes to Harvard.
We should mention that she's like the most stereotypically girly woman that you can probably imagine. Mm-hmm. She loves pink and jewelry and makeup and heels and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then she decides to go to Harvard.
Yes, no one takes her. He goes there.
Yeah, but no one takes her seriously.
Yeah, no one does take her seriously. But she gets in because she aced all her fashion major classes. And anyway, so she gets into Harvard and she gets to go to Harvard while confronting him, and she gets this really competitive internship with one of the people who's like an actual lawyer there at the school. She kills it. She does so well on this internship, and she basically forgets all about her ex-boyfriend and just becomes a lawyer and becomes a really good lawyer. And there's a lot of girl power with her making friends with other girls, and she's very supported throughout the movie by her friends in what she wants to do. She's like, I want to go to Harvard, and they're like, okay, we'll help you study, you know? And they do really well with that.
So you want to know if it passes?
Yes.
Actually, wait, before I say that, I just want to say this movie's kind of looked down upon by some people.
Yeah.
I actually remember, and when I was going through school, I had seen the movie. And, you know, even though, like, I was indoctrinated by my parents, I still believed in the idea of equality. So I saw this movie, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like that. She got her equality. And I remember my classmates at school being like, you liked that, Kyle? Isn't that a girly movie? But I didn't care. I also think normally the way that they portrayed this main character, the protagonist, what's her name, Elle?
Yeah.
Might be problematic because of how stereotypically of a girly girl she is. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's okay if that's a person's choice, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the reason that they did that was because they really wanted to turn it on its head.
Yeah, they really wanted to show that a girl can be like that and still kick ass.
Yes, but not even just like, oh, a girl has to become more manly to do it, right? Mm-hmm. But no, a girl can still, a woman can still dress up however she wants. You can still be in the trappings of a stereotypical, you know, extremely feminine attire and everything. And she can still do the job and kick butt, you know? Uh-huh. And I think that's the point they were going for.
Yeah. Actually, her knowledge about hair care is what wins her the case in the movie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it passes.
Yeah, of course it does.
There were several times they had conversations that would have qualified. Elle gets Brooke to tell her the alibi for the murder, which was getting the liposuction. Vivian tells Elle about the party and then lies about it being a costume party. Elle and Paulette discuss Vivian's looks, and Elle interviews Chutney. Oh, it also talks to the judge. So there were several times I looked up online because it's been so long since I've seen this. So yeah, definitely passes. And I think it even passed the fourth rule because there were so many of these conversations. I think one of them was bound to be over 30 seconds.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
So yeah, it passes.
All right, yay.
Yay.
Okay.
My number one.
Your number one favorite movie is Wreck-It Ralph.
Yes, I am not ashamed of that. I am very proud of it. I know there's a sequel coming out, so I might have to reevaluate this soon.
Oh, yeah, that sequel's going to be amazing. Did you see the princesses' casual outfits?
No, but I saw the scene with Vanellope meeting the princesses.
Oh my god, you have to see it. They're so awesome.
I don't know if it's going to top that princess scene, though, because they point out all the problems with the princesses.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
And all the kind of feminist type of stuff. But the reason I really like Wreck-It Ralph is it's a CG animated movie, which I love. I love watching that kind of stuff. I'm an animator, so I definitely appreciate that. But it's also about video games. And, as evidenced by this podcast, I like video games.
Yes, you like your video games.
Yes. And they have lots of references. It's kind of like the modern Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
Back then they did cartoons, but they actually used actual copyrighted cartoon characters. And they did this with video game characters. You have appearances from Bowser, Zangief, Sonic, Hubert, so many.
Yeah.
And even Wreck-It Ralph is really an analog to Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like this movie. I'll give you a synopsis. Basically, the whole thing takes place in an arcade, and all the arcade cabinets and the other games in the arcade can cross over into each other via their extension cords. In fact, the power strip is called Grand Central Station. So all these fictional game characters, essentially doing the games as their day job. At night when the arcade closes, that's when they go and they have fun. It's almost like a Toy Story thing, but in the digital world. The main character is Wreck-It Ralph. He's like a Donkey Kong figure. And his enemy is the good guy, because Wreck-It Ralph's the bad guy. The good guy is Fix-It Felix, who's essentially the Mario figure. Anyway, Wreck-It Ralph doesn't like being the bad guy, so he tries going into other people's games to try to find out who he is, to try to be better. He goes into Hero's Duty, which is a thing of Call of Duty.
Yeah, he wants to be a good guy.
Exactly, so he tries being a hero. He ends up causing a huge bit of mayhem when he brings one of the Cybug creatures from Hero's Duty to the Sugar Rush candy-coated Mario Kart knockoff.
Yeah.
And that's when he meets Vanellope, who's the female protagonist.
Yes.
And the Cybug ends up going crazy. There's a King Candy involved who rules the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Turns out he's actually already done this. He was actually Turbo from another game, and he took over Sugar Rush and became the king.
Yeah.
He ends up becoming part Cybug because the Cybugs are what they eat. So you start seeing candy Cybugs. One of them eats King Candy and becomes the King Candy Cybug / Turbo.
Yes.
And Wreck-It Ralph manages to save the day and everything. But the thing is with Vanellope, she's a glitch. She's not supposed to exist, supposedly. She's a cut character. But turns out that was actually King Candy's manipulation of the code. When they defeat King Candy, they put Vanellope in her rightful place. Turns out she was the ruler. She was the princess.
Yeah.
She ends up revoking the title of princess, though, and names herself president of the Sugar Rush Candyland.
Yeah.
And then, basically the day's saved. Oh, and by the way, Fix-It Felix, the Mario figure, ends up making a relationship with Sergeant Calhoun, who is the drill instructor from the Hero's Duty game.
Yes. And him and Ralph also become good friends.
Oh yeah, they make up and they realize that they don't have to be enemies out of the game. It's just their day job. They can still treat Ralph like a human.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the movie, there's a villain's counseling session. I forgot what it's called, but where they have Bowser, they have Clyde from the ghost from Pac-Man, they have Zangief, a zombie, so many other references. I love this movie.
Yeah. All right. So you want to hear?
Yes.
It passes. Kind of barely.
Aww.
The problem is that the main character is a man, so a lot of it is centered around them. But Vanellope does talk to the other female racers enough for it to pass.
Oh, and they do have names. They
Yes.
name each of the racers.
Yeah, they name each of them.
They're all named after candy or food.
Yes, exactly. So that counts enough. And it might pass the fourth rule depending on how long she talks to them, because there is a sequence where she gets bullied by them and they're all female.
Right.
And they're all talking. So
Actually, I don't think they're all female. The ones bullying her were. But
yeah, the ones bullying her. The main ones were female. And so yeah, it passes.
Okay. I mean, it's disappointing. Could have been better. And I think really the problem was, Fix-It Felix, Wreck-It Ralph, they were male. But I think having both the heroes from the other two games, not the main one, not the Wreck-It Ralph game, but the other two games, Hero's Duty and Sugar Rush, having them both be female with Vanellope and Sergeant Calhoun is probably the saving grace.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, Vanellope does talk to the other female racers. So
they could have done a lot worse.
Yeah, they could have.
They could have made Calhoun a man, or even Vanellope a boy.
Yeah, they could have.
So I'm glad that they at least did that, and I think that might have saved them in this case.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Great. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So that's been the Bechdel test. Mm-hmm. We still have some time, though. So anything else you want to talk about, Kira?
Do you want to talk about maybe why we did do
we kind of already
synopsis.
did that.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention how the Bechdel test can be applied to things other than movies.
Oh, okay.
It was made for movies, but you can use this with any piece of entertainment or media. Although it's best to break it up. Like for example, you can find a TV show, right? And you could rate the entire TV show, but maybe it'd be more useful to rate individual episodes.
Yeah.
But even then, you might have a TV show that on the whole passes, but on the episodes, well, most of them pass, but some episodes, just because of the way they're written, won't. Again, this test isn't foolproof. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to give you a test about something that was dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
Does the Fallout franchise, or any of the games in the Fallout franchise, pass the Bechdel test?
I don't know, do they?
I'm asking you. I know the answer. I'm asking you.
Oh, I think it really depends on whether you're playing as male or female.
I don't think it's fair to count the player character because the player character is a stand-in and can be male. So if we're really going to take this test seriously and say, oh, it passes because two women aren't talking to each other, it's not fair to say one of those women can be male if you so desire.
Fair enough. Okay.
So it has to be NPCs.
But NPCs don't talk to each other much.
They do, not as much as the player character does, but they definitely do. There's cutscenes all over the place in those games.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, sure. I think they do. At least some of them.
Are you going to break it down by game at all, or are you just going to say a blanket yes?
Well, I'm not sure about the first couple games because I have no clue about them.
All right, but what about 3, New Vegas, and 4?
I think 3 might, with the doctors talking to each other, because there are 2 female doctors. So I think Fallout 3 might. And then New Vegas, I think definitely does. I think so.
And 4?
And 4, Piper talks with her sister. So I'm going to say yes.
No, it fails.
Really?
The entire franchise.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Those doctors in 3 never talk to each other.
Oh.
And Piper does talk to her sister, but it's always about the Soul Survivor.
Okay.
Or Diamond City, which is led by a man.
Okay.
And in New Vegas, you will be very hard-pressed to ever find 2 females in the same room.
Wow. Okay.
I tried. I legitimately spent half an hour just thinking about all the memories we had playing Fallout. I was like, there's got to be some time. There isn't.
Oh, wow.
Even though New Vegas is such a progressive game, and we love that game because of its great storytelling, 3 and 4, they could have failed, and I wouldn't care so much.
Yeah.
But it's simply because of how rare the females are in those games.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's plenty of named female characters. They just don't talk to each other. And I think this also shows the limitations of the Bechdel test, because it wasn't made for games, especially a game like this where it's a role-playing game. If you take the main character out, that's going to really limit the number of interactions there are.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But I think because of that, you can maybe understand, okay, I get why it failed. this kind of different. It doesn't really count. You might say that, right? Mm-hmm. But you definitely cannot say it passes, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And maybe you guys can prove me wrong. Maybe you can find a conversation they did have. I really could not find a single one.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about like you're talking to Dr. Lee and she mentions the Dr. Janice one time, right? Mm-hmm. Or she shouts an order and Janice happens to be in the room. I mean, like they literally, she says one thing to the other one says something back. Mm-hmm. I could not find that with any female characters. And in Fallout 4, there was one of the major factions is led by a woman, right? Mm-hmm. The Railroad. Mm-hmm. The only faction worth defending, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But still, doesn't really ever talk to another woman.
Oh, wow.
I mean, she talks to Glory, which is a Railroad member, but she does talk. She talks about you, and I think part of that is because as an RPG game, it's so centered around your character and a little conceited in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
I think what makes New Vegas, I mean, the Fallout franchise is great, but especially New Vegas, so much better with its writing, is that they take away some of that selfishness. Mm-hmm. It's not all about you. A lot of the decisions can be affected by you, but you're more of a kingmaker. You decide who wins, right? As opposed to being the winner.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's why New Vegas is better, but still, I can't pass the Bechdel test unless you have female characters. Mm-hmm. I started thinking about this too, and I think this is why in Fallout games and many other games, I always choose to play as a female character. I mean, I never really understood. I would often give like reasons for why I wanted to pick a female. But I can't help but notice, I mean, look at every Fallout playthrough we've ever done. I've always picked a female. Mm-hmm. Why? Is it just a stereotype of guys playing as women? I like to think that's not me. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is because I don't have much of an identity with the male gender, as we talked about in our non-binary episode.
Yeah.
But I think part of it also is if you do count the main character and you're playing as a woman, you're saying for this playthrough, for my playthrough of the game, it passes the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Because you are making the sole person that everything's centered around a female character. Uh-huh. And I think that makes it more diverse when you consider that basically 4 out of 5 or maybe even 9 out of 10 of every character you're ever going to come across is a man.
Yeah.
Think about the leaders of all the factions. Fallout 4, 3 out of 4 are led by men. Mm-hmm. Fallout 3, there's only a handful of factions, but they're all led by men. And then Fallout New Vegas, Mr. House is a man. Caesar's Legion's led by a man. Mm-hmm. And the NCR is run by a man. Mm-hmm. Even Yes Man is a man. It has it in the name.
Yeah.
So I love New Vegas, but this is a huge stumbling block. And I pick a female character as a way of rectifying that.
I can understand that.
I mean, what do you think?
No, I agree with you. I completely agree with you.
I'm kind of just like spitballing here.
No, I completely agree with you. It's much better that you play as a female character because you get to have those interactions.
I definitely think that's true. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can play as whoever you want, but I think that's why I always chose for it to be a woman. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of muddled. I talked about how maybe I just relate more to that. Mm-hmm. I was always offended in the Fallout 4 advertising that they always used the male character in the ads until after the game was released.
Yeah.
That always really bugged me. And not only that, they did a Caucasian man.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, this is the Bechdel test. We've been talking about why this matters. I just tried to apply it to one of our favorite games. And I think we learned a lot from this about our favorite movies. Maybe we need to reevaluate some of them. Mm-hmm. I was surprised. 4 out of 5 of yours definitely passed.
That's great.
I mean, maybe that's not really surprising. Maybe that talks about how, as a feminist woman, you really just don't like ones that don't meet up to your standards.
I guess.
And I think these are very low standards to have.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I guess that speaks a lot about your character, I think.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't do so well.
No.
What did I get? 2 out of 5? 3 out of 5?
2 out of 5 definitely pass. 2 barely pass and 1 doesn't.
Okay, so I got 4 out of 5, kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
But your 4, like, really passed out of the ballpark. You didn't get a single barely. Well, actually, no, Fantastic Beasts was a barely.
Oh, fair enough.
So, yeah, we did pretty well.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, so, yeah, this is the Bechdel test. Oh.
The game This game
No,
theory.
but Game Theorem, talking about the Bechdel test. That's why we did this episode.
Yes.
I did want to mention that there is a podcast I listen to called the Bechdel Cast. It's an entire podcast based around this. I just wanted to mention it because I feel like I might have slipped up and said Bechdel Cast at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
If so, that's why. Anyway, so we wanted to do an episode on it. This is it. This is Game Theorem. We have social media with women talking to each other if they so choose to comment. That's the best I could do. Sorry. And then we got an email, gametheorems@gmail.com. Give us feedback, corrections, or suggestions. Tell us about your favorite movies and your experiences with this particular test.
Yes.
All right. This is Kyle. Bye.
This is Kira. Bye.
Bye.